much. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here and also thank the rest of the panel. I really haven't heard much that I could disagree with, and a lot of good comments. And I'd like to start by echoing a couple of those, especially a lot of the discussion around NEPA, consistency, simplification, and predictability would be hugely helpful for project delivery. We in the private freight industry, we don't have a tremendous amount of experience dealing with NEPA as we fund most of our own capital, but what experience we do have is pretty daunting, frankly. I'm not sure how some of these agencies that deal with hundreds of federal projects do it when we have our hands full with a few. Moving on to to some of the rest of what I wanted to bring up. You know, everyone around this table recognizes that that supply chain is important. You know, one of the stats that we've taken a look at is and recognized is that logistics costs in the United States represent about 8% of GDP. In China, it's 22%, and I think that we need to recognize that that's a tremendous competitive advantage that we have. But China's investing rapidly, and we are going to need to invest rapidly to keep up. That distance that we have between us creates a lot more headroom for American manufacturers and for American workers to compete in the global marketplace. We need to maintain that. Now, for the freight rail industry, we've identified our own funding source. We sell our services to our customers, they pay us, and we reinvest most of that funding into our networks. But where we are concerned is about where we connect with the rest of the U.S. supply chain. The connections at the intermodal facilities, the intermodal connectors, the highways, the roads, the facilities. U.S. trucking companies are actually some of our largest customers now, and we need to figure out how do we best work together to have the most appropriate mode of transportation handle a particular move in a particular way. Other areas that we need to take a look at is port connectivity. That's another one that I want to recognize as well. Not just the connections near the ports and the rail connections near the ports, but also the rail connections feeding the ports. We had a great project underway here in California with the catastrophes that we partnered with the Port of Oakland on through the California TCIF program to expand capacity serving Northern California ports. There's a lot more opportunities for that to be done, and there's a lot of ports out there that need a tremendous amount of work done to expand their access. And those ports are not just the container ports that people typically think of bringing goods into this country, but also a lot of the bulk ports and other sort of niche ports that do most of their work actually exporting goods and exporting American bulk products and exporting American manufactured products. But I think there's another area of that we need to take a look at also, and that's PPPs, and that's my job. There needs to be flexibility in the funding that's out there for us to accomplish a lot of these different types of projects, especially the multimodal ones, where the freight rail network interacts with the highway network, where they interact with the river network, where they interact with ports. Those sorts of projects, with the current framework of very specialized funding programs out there, can be very difficult to get done. Because you have many different modes and many different partners participating in these projects, it's very difficult for any one of them to necessarily justify it. But if they can find out a way for all of them to work together and have various public partners pay for public benefits and achieve those benefits, various private partners pay for their benefits, and get projects done that wouldn't otherwise necessarily get done. So these are very important projects, like I was talking about before, port connectivity. Another area to look at is economic development. There's a lot of need out there, and a lot of desire out there for communities to open rail-served industrial facilities, transloads, intermodal facilities. Facilities like those that require a lot of funding are going to require flexibility. And another area that we'd like to make sure everyone remembers is while we're trying to develop all this infrastructure and drive more traffic and drive more freight intensity, we want to make sure that we don't forget about the communities that are around this infrastructure, many of whom have to bear the burden of national freight flows going through their communities. And there's a tremendous opportunity all over this country to do projects that reduce the impact of the freight intensity on local communities. BNSF participated in a few and working on a few more that I think are very successful, and we'd like to see that sort of activity continue as well. So I have I've got a bunch of information here on some of the projects. I'm happy to talk some more about them, but I think that's what I really wanted to get across.
Thank you, and waiting patiently, we have one of the commissioners for the California Transportation Commission, Darius Assemi. Welcome, and you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, welcome to Fresno. I want to thank Congressman Denham for making this possible. The California Transportation Commission is working on a master transportation plan for California. This is in conjunction with transportation agencies. It will reflect a 10-year projection of California's transportation requirements and needs. This will cover system preservation, system management, and finally system expansion. This report will be ready sometime in April, and at that point we would like to sit down with you either in Washington or in California to review findings of this report and the challenges that California faces with all its intermodal transportation needs. We do support there is a provision at the commission which provides for P3s, which we think that could be a key element in procuring projects going forward. And one of the other elements that we're looking at as part of this master transportation plan is performance of projects before they get programmed. So what is the benefit of each project in terms of goods movement, air quality, job creation, congestion relief, etc., as it's being programmed and procured. So we look forward to sitting down with you and the other members of the committee once this plan is put together. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we covered all of the panelists. Didn't miss anyone. And the order of business now will be questions from members, and I'm going to yield both the chair for a few minutes and also for questions to our host and member of the committee, Mr. Denham. So you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first question I have is, besides duplicity, in fact this question goes to Mr. Mosier, besides duplicity, what are your biggest frustrations with NEPA and the CEQA processes?
I think for us the biggest frustrations with those would again be the time frame that's involved in that process. Here in the urban area, we're actually quite successful. We don't really have issues with just say example a street resurfacing project, but again on CEQA and NEPA that we're doing two processes. We're investing a lot of money which otherwise would go into construction of projects. Jobs created. Again, and what I would submit to the committee is that there's opportunity to marry those two up together. An exemption for smaller projects is a good opportunity, or an exemption for those that are already cleared under CEQA if it's consistent with the general plan. For whatever city or county we're in the state, we've already addressed that, and it seems a foregone conclusion then that's a road that should go from 2 to 4 lanes, for example.
And on average, how much does complying with CEQA and NEPA cost you on each project?
If it is a very straightforward project, that's just in the range of perhaps $2,000, $2,000 or $3,000. But if we're talking any project that needs right-of-way, anything to acquire, we can go upwards of $50,000 in the NEPA process, and that's per project.
And Mr. Ray, I'd ask you the same questions. Besides duplicity, what are your biggest frustrations with the NEPA and CEQA, and how much does that drive up the cost of each of the projects?
Thank you, Congressman. As the first, it seems to us in California that CEQA is a very stringent environmental law. I don't think too many people would say it wasn't. And I know Congressman Richardson's staff, because we were back there last year talking to them about streamlining, has taken lead in trying to write some sort of legislation that would treat CEQA in a similar manner as NEPA. I don't know if it's exactly equal. I know the language has changed a bit. But it just seems to us we're taking two processes. They're similar, but they're different at the same time. CEQA's trying to get at mitigation. What do you need to do to mitigate your impact? Where NEPA's trying to come up with the broadest coalition of support for a project. And those two don't always line up together. So you end up studying things in two different ways, and on occasion you can actually be contradictory. So just trying to get to the project. And again, my projects are simple. They're trying to do safety improvement projects. They're trying to replace bridges. They're trying to make sure that we can do the best job with the dollars we have. It just seems that we ought to pick one. Now, I know California was the only only state under safety loop that opted to have NEPA done by Caltrans. And the state had to give up our sovereign immunity to be sued in federal court in order to do that. There were 6 states named, the other 5 apparently didn't want to do it. We did, and we thought at first, well, that will help. And while I think it helps, I think it's also true that Caltrans became even more conservative in their environmental reviews because they didn't want to get sued. And you can understand that. So every I is dotted and T is crossed 2 and 3 and 4 times. So a lot of these things, if you were to look through that thing that I left for you, the 5 pages, you look at them and you just say, what relevance does that have to widening a road 2 feet, putting a guardrail on it? And it's very hard to come to a conclusion that it does. So those are the types of things, Congressman, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
As the cost, when I was a young engineer, probably in the early 80s, it wasn't unusual I was in the private sector at the time, the public sector jobs that we worked on to be 10 to 15 cents on the construction dollar to get through the process of design and the environmental approval. My most recent bridge projects are pushing 40 cents on the construction dollar now. Now, I'd like to think that the environment is more protected today. I hope it is, but I think it's just the process has gotten longer and longer and more complex to get through. And if we really want to save money and don't want to have to raise taxes and other things, if we could get that number back down to 10 to 15 cents on the dollar and still do good, solid environmental protection where it really is warranted, I think that would be a good place to start.
Thank you. And thank you as well.